It's time for Rod Liddle in Uncancelled. And you know, this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. And just when you thought you'd got rid of him, Tony Blair pops up again with another public declaration to irk the nation. After his election in 1997, the former Labour PM successfully campaigned to get 50% of our youngsters to university without a thought for the quality of education they would receive or the useless degrees they could end up with.
Ask me my three main priorities for government, and I tell you, education, education, and education.
Now Blair is demanding 70% of our young people go to university in a bid to tackle our productivity crisis, forgetting all about those pesky tuition fees he introduced. But even his own son, Ewan, disagrees. The 38-year-old is making a tidy £160 million from an education startup that rubbishes university and promotes apprenticeships instead.
By the way, we have a very similar system in the UK, and people for decades have been relying on university to produce all of this talent. One of the ways you change it is the kind of employers you get involved in it. That's a big opportunity for a lot of people, and they see that actually you don't need to rely on an academic system in order to get there.
So, Rod, I have a feeling I know the answer to this, but who are you backing, Tony Blair or his son?
Who's done very, very well, of course. He did have some money to start with, a bit of a start-up capital from his dad, but he's done very well with Multiverse. And he's seen the problems of British industry and the problems of our society correctly from a point of view of working with them, in that he knows that we have hundreds of thousands of apprenticeships which are going begging and hundreds of thousands of jobs in engineering which simply aren't being filled. And we're having to import people to do those jobs. And that's because people aren't taking apprenticeships, because they have followed this mantra laid down by Tony Blair that everyone must go to university. And what's happened, of course, is that 50% of people now go to university, 25%, or at least I would say probably 30% of that 50%, have no place at university because they're not academically minded. But they're told that they have to go, otherwise their lives will be ruined and they won't be able to get good jobs. And they spend £30,000, £40,000 on a degree which turns out to be, in the end, useless. And they can't get any good jobs. And they are shrouded in debt. And this is because we've fetishised universities, just as Tony Blair has insisted we must. And now he's come back and told us that we ought to have 70% of school leavers go to university, but it doesn't work. There aren't that many people who are capable of doing academic work and getting a serious, important degree which will lead them on to employment in future. What we do have is a shortage of manners in which we can train the less academically gifted, but practically very, very gifted indeed individuals to do the jobs which this society is desperately crying out for. And that's particularly in the engineering, but also in the IT sector. How Tony Blair doesn't understand that, since his son, Ewan, has been telling him it for the last 5 to 10 years, I simply do not know. But then we also ought to remember, Dan, that only a couple of weeks ago, Tony waded in on the Ukrainian invasion and was advising us what to do when a country illegally invades another country, where at least, you know, you have to say he has some experience of that particular issue. He seems to be so disconnected with both what industry wants and what society wants and what young people want.
And it's so sad, isn't it, Rod? Because I'm sure you know as many folk as I do who went to university simply because they felt they had to. They weren't passionate about their degree. They didn't get anything out of it. They don't use it. And we have to change this fundamental view that you're somehow a failure if you don't get a useless degree that you're never going to use. It's just wrong. And actually, a load of successful people, probably more successful people I know than not, never had a university degree. And it's actually been great for them in some ways because they felt that they could explore whatever they wanted to do rather than being pigeonholed because of what they chose to study at a very young age.
Well, that's exactly right, Dan. And Germany seems to have the best approach to this, which is it affords the same kind of status that people who have university degrees get to people who do apprenticeships and who work for industry. I mean, the other way of redressing the balance, and it's redressed already, if you look at the jobs that are available to apprentices and the sort of money that they can be earning in 4 or 5 years' time, it easily outstrips the amount of money you would get from going to the University of Westminster, getting a degree in culture studies, and all you find yourself doing 5 years later is saying, Dan, would you like fries with that? You know, we need to change. Yes, we need to change the way in which society looks at universities. And I think, in fact, that universities are making themselves magnificently unpopular at the moment amongst ordinary people because of their pretty boneheaded approach to cultural issues. And to history, trying to abolish history. So I think that's already there. What we need to do is make it clear to young people that university is not merely not the be-all and end-all, but is often a very, very, very bad option indeed if you are not someone who is incredibly academically gifted and can get a wonderful degree in physics, which will take you on to a great career.
Rod, does it worry you that a lot of Tories, a lot of people in power, certainly lots of members of the blob, take very seriously what Tony Blair says, even today?
That's because they're all social science grads, as I think you pointed out right at the beginning. And to be absolutely honest, Dan, mate, it's not terribly different in my trade, as being a journalist. We're all social science grads. And
me too.
We have too many of them. Yeah, you too. We have too many of them. We're largely useless, Dan.
Yep, I agree. I'm with you.
I would much rather, if I'd had my time over again, I'd have done chemistry. I would have done something which might be of some use to mankind, rather than kind of propaganda or resentment studies, which seems to be the main degrees which you can get these days. We've too many social science graduates and not enough science-trained people to do the kind of jobs we need. And Tony Blair's intervention, maybe based on the fact that everything Tony Blair says is wrong, people will listen to this and say, God, yes, let's stop universities taking so many people.
I think that's why it's so good that we've had this discussion, Rod. Thank you so much. We'll speak next week. That is Rod Liddle.